Financial headlines are designed for clicks and panic. One day it's recession, and the next it's an inflation spike. If I'm going to make the smartest decisions for my family, I need to understand what actually moves the economy and which indicators are worth watching. So I'm going straight to the source. Today, I'm going over 7 data points I'm going to start tracking to get a better understanding of the current economic environment. No spin, no hype. I'm not an economist, starting from zero and learning on the fly. Let's jump into it. To understand the data, we need to understand how the economy is influenced. Today, we're going to be looking at the monetary side of things. The Federal Reserve is the central bank for the US. Their main job, the dual mandate. Price stability, keeping inflation around 2%. Maximum employment, keeping as many people working as possible. They manage this balance in two ways: quantitative easing and quantitative tightening. Quantitative easing is when the Fed creates new money and buys government bonds. This puts money into the system, lowers interest rates, and makes borrowing easier. This supports financial markets, encourages economic activity, and is used to combat unemployment. Quantitative tightening is when the Fed stops buying bonds and lets the existing ones mature. This removes money from the system and raises interest rates. This slows borrowing, tightens economic conditions, and is used to fight high inflation. Understanding if the Fed is tightening or squeezing gives me an idea if I need to build up my emergency fund more or if it's a good time to start looking to purchase a home or a car with a loan. Now let's talk about who owns the data and where it's stored. So where do we get the truth? We get it from Fred. No, Fred's not an actual person. It's the Federal Reserve economic data. Think of Fred as the world's most trusted economic library. It simply pulls raw data from dozens of different agencies, like the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Census Bureau, and puts them in charts where anyone can access them for free. Now let's look at the 7 specific charts I'm watching right now. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product, or in other words, it's the total value of all goods and services produced within a country. As of Q4 2025, our GDP was at $24.1 trillion. However, it only grew at a 1.4% annual rate. In 2016, you can see we're roughly around $19 trillion. Now we're just above 24 trillion. While we are still growing, notice the cool down. In Q3, we grew about 4.4%, and in Q4, that dropped down to 1.4%. Now I'm watching this to see if our growth is cooling too fast, because this could have an impact on the job market. This measures what percentage of people who want and are actively looking for a job can't find a job. When this rises, it's a signal for me to double check my own job security and make sure our emergency fund is at least at 6 months. The general consensus on a normal unemployment rate is about 4 to 5%. As of January 1st, 2026, we're at about 4.3%. It has been creeping up since the lows of 3.4% from 2023. Now you might notice there's a little break in the line near the end of 2025. This was due to the government shutdown, resulting in the missing data. This is the total amount of currency, checking deposits, and near money currently in the economy. Think of the money supply as the irrigation system. Money helps families grow, but if the Fed pumps in too much money too fast, it can quickly cause a flood, and that flood is inflation. When the supply rises too quickly, the value of each dollar drops. At the end of 2025, our money supply was at about $22.4 trillion. Look at the chart around 2020. You'll see we went into a spike from about 15 trillion to 21 trillion in record time. CPI stands for the Consumer Price Index, and this specific index is focused on grocery prices. This measures the average change over time in prices paid for a representative basket of groceries. Think of the CPI as our national receipt. It's the cold, hard record of what we paid for. Now, as of the beginning of this year, the index sits at 345.165. Now, 2 important points to keep in mind. When inflation slows, prices usually aren't falling. They're just rising slower than they were before. The second point is this is a lagging indicator. You only get the receipt after you've already done all the shopping. This is the new normal, and we have to adjust our budget to match it. This measures the average price of a gallon of regular gasoline in the US. Gas is non negotiable. It's how we get to the jobs where we generate our income. It's a visible expense that impacts how much fund money we have at the end of the month. As of February 16th, 2026, the average price of a gallon of gas in the US is about $2.92. If you take a look at the graph, during 2022, you can see a huge spike in the price of gas where it was at $5 a gallon. We're seeing some of the best gas prices since 2021. This stability allows us to allocate that extra savings into different parts of our budget. This is the Fed's brake and accelerator. When interest rates lower, this is the acceleration. When they're raised, this is the brake to help cool off inflation. As of January 1st, 2026, the Fed interest rate is at about 3.64%. We jumped from 0% in 2022 up to 5% in 2024, and at 3.64%, we're sitting in the middle ground. Debt is more expensive, but high yield savings account is actually paying you interest. And the final data point I'm sure everybody's been waiting for, mortgage rates. This is the average interest rate for a 30-year fixed rate home loan. This is where the Fed's moves actually hit your front door. It is the single biggest factor in a family's housing security. As of February 19th, 2026, the rate was at 6.01%. In 2021, we saw an all-time low of about 2.65%. The key takeaway here is stop waiting for a crash down to 2% again. Those rates were a result of extreme pumping. Planning our lives around 6% is much more realistic. Tracking this helps me understand what a house actually costs in today's environment. We saw interest rate cuts throughout 2025. For the last 2 years, they were focused on killing inflation. But now things have changed. Mortgage rates are the lowest they've been in about 3 years. So, what's the purpose of tracking all this? It's to be better prepared. When you understand the goal of the Fed and the money supply, you stop reacting to headlines and you start responding to the data. Understanding these environments is how we keep our families safe regardless of the economic environment. We're not trying to predict the future, we're just trying to be ready for it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.